What was the date of your wedding?
July 2nd, 1956.
And how big was the wedding?
Oh, it was quite small. I'd say probably 40, 50 people. Yeah.
And did you have a lot of your cousins and etc.
No,
show up?
I didn't have a lot of my cousins. I had a few aunts and uncles, and I had, of course, we had Ray's folks, like Paul and Willie, and my dad and his wife, and my brother and his wife. But other than that, there weren't a large number of people there, and I didn't invite many of my friends. I invited a few, but Ray didn't invite any. So, there just wasn't that many people. Yeah.
Was it kept small due to cost,
Oh,
or?
of course.
No.
It's a very funny story that goes with that. Everybody always thought that the fellow that was putting on the banquet at the hotel had a crush on me, and after he put on a spread, I guess that he shouldn't have, he got fired.
Mm.
Oh, that was kind of funny, because it wasn't funny, but.
Okay. Tell me about your best friends that did come.
My matron of honor was my sister-in-law. Um, and of course your family was there. I remember very distinctly because your dad, your grandpa, was Ray's best man, and I can always remember your mother. This is so funny. So Marlene and your grandpa and Ray and I are driving away in the car, and Bonney is absolutely screaming at the fact that her father is going away in a car with somebody else. So that's how I knew that Bonnie's well, not quite, but Bonney and I are 20 years apart, and that's how I know, because she was 7 and I was 27. Yeah.
Why was Les chosen as the best man?
Because Ray always really liked your grandpa, yeah. Rather than Willie or Paul, yeah.
And why wouldn't Raymond have invited any friends?
Because it was in Edmonton, and there just wasn't that many. You see, he hadn't been in Edmonton that long. I think if he had been in Saskatoon, it would have been a little different, yeah. Because a lot of his friends weren't in Edmonton yet. A lot of them. There's a few moved here from Saskatoon there. There would have been more, or he would have had more, say, from work, but he'd only been working at Devon a few months, yeah.
And so when you got married, did you guys have some initial future plans head out together?
Oh, I don't think so. We went to Sylvan Lake for our honeymoon, and that was nice, because Ray and I were always very fond of Sylvan Lake. We had gone out there a lot when we were dating and things, so it was a very special place for us, yeah.
So before you married, what kind of activities did you guys have in common that you like to do?
Well, we were Ray and I both really liked the water and stuff, so we spent a lot of time, like, going out on the boat and that sort of thing. Although he liked fishing and I didn't, but both Father and Gladys liked it too, so we went out and did a lot of fishing. Ray did a lot of fishing, but I liked being on the water, yeah, so I went out quite a bit with them there. And then we went dancing quite often, yeah.
Who was your best friend at that time?
Oh, let me think. Now, you see, my thing was that my girlfriends had all married and I had gone to Bermuda. So it was kind of a different thing to come back, because then I didn't really, I still had my old girlfriends, but sort of complexion of the thing had sort of changed, yeah. So I'd say at that time, probably my best girlfriend actually was my sister-in-law, Dawn's wife, yeah.
And how did you land up getting close to her
Um,
or connecting?
well, because our children were, well, she had come to Calgary a few times with the kids and stuff because my brother was taking electrical course and he had to go to school. He had to go to school in Calgary because there was no NAIT in Edmonton at that time. So he had to go to school in Calgary. So she used to come with the children and sometimes to see Dawn. And so I'd see her then. And then when we moved back, no, we didn't move back to Edmonton. Um, During the time I was in Edmonton anyway, I was, I was quite close to, because later on our kids were quite close in age and stuff, yeah.
When did your brother marry?
He married when he was 18, so he would have been 35. 35. He married in about 53. Unfortunately, his wife left him. So,
How many kids did he have?
two boys. And I was heartbroken because I really liked the kids. And after there's a divorce, it's never the same. Yeah. And then my brother moved to Vancouver anyway. Married here, married another girl here, and moved to Vancouver.
So Robin is born, and you take some time off after the pregnancy, and then you go back to teach.
Yeah.
And Raymond was still working the same job all through the late 50s.
Well, he was apprenticing then, and then he finally got his ticket, and he worked for quite a number of refrigeration companies, and then after that we moved to Edmonton, yeah. But all my children were born in Calgary, in the General Hospital, which they blew up. Yeah. So they were, Amy was born in 59, and Seth was born in 62.
Had you planned or hoped to have more than one child?
Oh yes. I felt like I was an only child, being 6 years between my brother and I. And I said I'd never do that to my kids. So Ray and I really planned Amy, because we both wanted, because with his family there was 4 years between them. And they were, 4 years when you're a child is a lot of years. And he said the same thing I did, that even, and then for him it was even harder because he was always left to look after Paul and Willie, because he was 8 years older than Willie and always 4 years older than Paul, So we planned to have the girls as close together as possible. So 2 years and 3 months was as close as we seemed to be able to get them, because I didn't seem to get pregnant that easy for some reason. So and then we always wanted a boy, so along came Seth. So.
And was there ever plans or hope for a fourth?
I wanted a fourth, but I wanted to make sure it was a boy. And that wasn't possible. We were even at a point where we were going to adopt a boy. And then Ray said to me, well, I would never feel the same about him as I feel about Seth. So I said, Ray, if you feel that way, there's no sense in us going through with the fourth child. So we didn't. And the reason I had such a lot of trouble. I had postnatal phlebitis and stuff with Seth, so I had a fair amount of trouble. That was the other thing. By this time I was 33, and in those days, my Lord, 33 was really old to have a baby. Now they're having 40, 45, but at that time it was quite old to have a child, yeah. So that's another reason. Because I've always thought in my heart of hearts, and I still think it, I think 4 is a nice family. Either 2 or 4. 3 is a bad number. It's odd numbers are hard to deal with. Yeah.
Did you stay in much contact with your dad after you married?
Oh yes, he came. He came to Calgary quite often. After we were married. After we were married, we went to Calgary shortly after, and so he came to Calgary quite a bit, and I came to Edmonton maybe twice a year. And I used to come in the summer, and I used to spend probably a week here. Yeah. And we got together for Christmas. We never missed a Christmas together. I think Dad either came to Calgary or we came to Edmonton. Yeah.
And you went to Calgary for Raymond's work?
Yeah. We went to Calgary because SAIT was in Calgary, and that was the tech school for refrigeration. There wasn't one here. Yeah.
And you stayed there till?
Stayed there from 56 to 66, 10 years. And I
So
was
you
really
did-
glad to get back to Edmonton.
You did, so you did teach there.
Yeah, I taught in Calgary also, yeah.
And so what kind of teaching were you doing early on?
I started out in grades, like sort of grades 2 and 3. But I realized that I wasn't really, that sort of wasn't my niche. Grade 4, 5, and 6 was my niche. And especially grade 6s. The last 11 years that I taught only grade 6. And I really I like dealing with children at a more adult level. I like to be able to say, okay kids, this is the work for this morning. When you get finished, you can have a spare. As long as you don't talk too loud, you can visit with your friends, you can read a book, you can do anything. You know what I mean? That's the sort of thing I liked. I like sort of being able to talk with them and do things with them. Like we went out in camps together, and we went cross-country skiing, and we did all kinds of things together. And I really, that was what I liked. I liked doing things with them, and it was much easier at grade 6 level. Yeah.
How strict were you with the kids?
I probably wasn't strict enough. I don't think I was never the disciplinarian I would have liked to have been. I think the children basically liked me, especially in grade 6, because I think they felt that I really cared about them, and I felt I did for the most part, you know. And I tried to sort of see their life from their viewpoint more, and many of them had a lot of problems. But as I say, I just found that we did a lot of really neat things, and I think I encouraged them. I hope that I gave them a bit more self-confidence, which strangely enough in a grade 12 or 13-year-old, it's very lacking. I mean, I had about 3 boys, and maybe a couple of girls, that I felt were very, very confident. That I remember this kid called Jim Burbridge. Now Jim was a nice looking boy, and he was very clever. But the most astounding thing about Jim was the fact that he would wear a suit to school. Sometimes. He said, I like to. The boys would say, what are you trying to prove, Burbridge? He said, I happen to like to wear a suit sometimes. Okay? And they accepted that from him. Because he was a ringleader sort, and they looked up to him. And you want to wear a suit? That was fine, you know. And then I had a couple other children. I had a couple of girls I felt were very, you know, with the program and stuff. But I think the most wonderful thing is to have a child in your room and to come back to you when they're a teacher and, you know, tell you how much they enjoyed the class, or that maybe you're an inspiration to them or something. You know what I mean? That's really nice, yeah, yeah. Or, you know, to see you and say, oh, give you a big hug, and, you know.
Did you notice any big changes in the whole teaching system from the time you started to finish?
Oh, yes. Once, I started in 52, and at that time we had no TV. Now, TV came into Alberta in about 56. And I'd say the first 6 or 7 years were pretty good. Like, they were, you know, pretty well family type programs where mother and father weren't made to look completely stupid, and, you know, I mean, the whole idea. But then I felt TV programs got so they defied authority, like parental authority, police, teachers, whatever there was in an authoritarian position, they were made fun of. Like, I mean, maybe you liked it, Terry, but I just hated the Dukes of Hazzard, because I felt that the way that they depicted that sheriff and everything was really bad for, you know, for the police, which have a hard job. I mean, I know there's a lot of dopey policemen, but I mean, they do have a hard job. And I just felt that as a teacher and looking at this thing, that this was really bad. And I wouldn't want to be teaching now. The parents have far too much to say. And they will question what you do. They will question the school. They will question this. I said, if you're a doctor, people don't come into your office and criticize you, particularly, or a dentist, or anything like that. Like, I mean, you're supposed to sort of know what you're doing. And Terry, I'm the first one to say that there are bad teachers out there. But there's bad doctors, and there's bad everything, contractors, or whatever you want to mention. Mm-hmm. So we don't necessarily have the privilege of being the only ones that are poor. And I mean, I'm sure you remember having poor teachers, and as a student, what you have to do, if you're any kind of a student, is you have to compensate for their lack of ability. And I think for children, having a poor teacher is a good experience in some ways, if they can sort of rise above it a bit and doesn't really damage them. Because I think that's part of the thing in life, accepting people that you're probably going to have to work with that don't cut it. And you have to learn to work around it, or accept it, or maybe in a position of authority, you might be able to fire that person. But, you know, I think it's all a life skills. And I found that children would go and complain to their parents that they didn't like this teacher, and then the parents would take him out of the room and put them in another room, and then he would say on the playground when you were on duty, I mean, this didn't happen. It didn't happen to me at that particular, I mean, that wasn't my thing at the time. This was in a lower class. But I was on duty one day, and this boy said, well, if I don't like what the teacher does, my parents will move me. You know? And I think, well, that's not really teaching a child any kind of life skills. I mean, you can't, you have to accept people you don't like to a certain degree. I mean, you don't have to be friends with them or anything like that, but sometimes you have to work with people you don't like.
Did you have a particular favorite subject you like to teach?
Of course, I love phys ed the best. Phys ed, English, social studies, and language arts. I always liked English and that sort of thing, like words and all that. So for me, social studies, language arts, and phys ed were my favorites. I didn't care for science, and I was terrible in math. So, but it's a funny thing. Sometimes if you're really bad in a subject, you actually do a better job of teaching it, because when this child has problems, particularly at a lower grade, if that child has problems, you can remember yourself having problems, and I think it. Maybe you're not a better teacher, but at least you're more understanding. You don't expect miracles, you know.
Right.
Yeah. And
So you like to teach phys ed,
yeah,
and that's because you had a natural interest.
yeah.
And do you think that helped to motivate you to do even more yourself, personally?
Uh, well, the nice thing about it was, in my 11 years, I hardly ever taught science or math, because our assistant principal had to teach a certain amount, was a math science major. So he would take my grade 6s, and I would go down to grade 1 and 2 and teach phys ed. So that was nice for both of us, you know. I mean, for him, it was great because he was teaching exactly what he wanted, and for me it was just as nice because that's what I was doing too. Yeah.
Were you involved with horses at all during the 50s?
Oh no, not during the 50s. When we moved back to Edmonton, we finally moved to the acreage in the December of 66. Then about a year later we got horses. So it would have been about 68. And then
Did you get the kids involved with them right away?
Amy was very involved with them. Robin wasn't that enthusiastic, and Seth wasn't that enthusiastic, but Seth was a good rider, an excellent rider. He just seemed to have a knack for it. So Amy was really the one that, her and I shared the horses very much. We usually had 2 horses, and we had a lot of fun. And then later on, Ray was very nice and bought me a trailer. Then I was able to trailer my horses out to some pretty fantastic places, and forge rivers, and
Did you do competitions?
yeah, I was never very good. I wasn't. You see, the problem is, I think that's it. Maybe it's that way in a lot of things, Terry. If you are sort of a harem-scarum rider when you're a kid, like you develop certain bad habits. And boy, when you turn to riding as an adult, you seem to take all those bad habits with you. And it's really hard to break. And I always said, it didn't seem to matter how many lessons I took, I still looked like a sack of potatoes, you know what I mean? But I did enjoy riding, yeah. And I made a lot of good friends, and it was good, yeah.
Are there any sports or physical things that Raymond was into with you?
Well, he supported the horses. I mean, he was very good. He made sure I had the trail, I had the hay. He was very good about getting the hay. Just excellent, but he didn't like horses. He simply did not like them. Because he was raised in a farming community, horses were something he worked with, and something that he had to work with at different times. And so for him, horses were no sort of source of pleasure. But as I say, he was very good about it. He made sure I had a good barn, and he was very good about that. Yeah.
When did you start playing tennis?
I was there probably about mid 70s. The woman next door moved in, and she was from the States. She loved to play tennis. So that summer, well, that would have been, yeah, Seth was 12, so that would have been 62, 72, about 74. Um, this woman moved in next door, and her son was the same age as Seth. So the whole summer, Ruth and I, and Seth and Case, her son, we played tennis. So that was good, yeah. And then we got to know a bunch of women, and we started to play, and it was good, yeah. We had the tennis court quite close by, yeah. It wasn't that far to go, so it was nice. It was a very nice sport, but I gave it up for quite a number of years for my grandchildren. I either had to give up riding or tennis, so I gave up tennis, and I couldn't do both if I had the grandchildren. So, and then what happened to kind of make me decide to quit tennis at that time was one of my dear friends who lived next door to me, the one that got me started with tennis. She died, and somehow, like, she was always the glue that held us all together. She was always the one that got the games together and everything else. When Ruth died, it just kind of didn't mean the same to me for a long time. I went back playing tennis again about 5 years ago. A very rickety bunch that we are.
Mm-hmm. So, did you, when the kids were just growing up, did you have any, kind of future goals that you wanted to push your children towards?
Well, I felt that they should pursue some kind of a trade or something at university, or whatever they wanted to do. But I definitely wanted them to better their education.
Did they all take music lessons? And
They all took music lessons, yeah, and they all were quite good at it, yeah. And that was one of the things that and they all took swimming lessons. They're all good swimmers. All skated, like we did everything. Like we swam, we skated, we played a little bit of tennis. We rode enough to know what riding was all about. And what else did we do? Swim, tennis, skate. We skied a little, cross-country skied a little bit. Didn't do really much downhill. Seth did downhill later on his own. I was involved with Seth a lot with his hockey. I went to a lot of games. I'd say for about 10 years. I was very involved with his hockey. Ray wasn't. Ray was very supportive and loved to see Seth play, but he never felt that Seth played up to his potential. So he was quite critical of him. So he said, well, I'm too critical of Seth. I won't even bother going to his games. So he went to quite a number of them, and he'd always go in tournaments and stuff, but he felt that he was too critical, which was fine for me, because then he looked after the girls, and did the cooking and whatever, so it worked out all right for us, but that's the way he felt about Seth. That's the way it was.
What was the reason you moved back to Edmonton in '66?
Well, I never was a Calgarian. I mean, I was a true Edmontonian. I hated Calgary. I hated the climate, because you're always getting those Chinooks. And they were horrible, and the wind was always blowing, and I just never Calgary just never, even after 10 years, Calgary just never felt like home. I don't know what it was about it. When I came, and Ray was very nice. He transferred, he was working with Loblaws, I transferred back to Edmonton. And he said, Peggy, I know you've always wanted to go back to Edmonton. And I did. And I thought that was very nice of him to do that.
How often?
Because I think for him, he would have been very happy to stay in Calgary. Yeah.
How often did you see his relatives at that time?
Probably twice a year. We saw them usually at in the summertime, and then again at Christmas, or like generally we saw them twice. Like if we didn't go for Christmas, like we'd sometimes go in the fall or in the spring. Like so we go summer Easter, or summer Christmas. Like we kind of varied it a bit. Yeah.
Did his parents ever come to Calgary or Edmonton to visit?
Yes, his mother came when Amy was born and spent some time. Dad didn't come at that time. I'd say perhaps in our marriage, Mother spent a week in all the years of our marriage. I mean, she just never felt at home. She always wanted to be back home. You know, and I don't think they had a lot of money. I think that maybe was one of the reasons too. I think money was a problem, you know, and I don't think they were able to often to travel because of that. Yeah, but I don't think either one of them really enjoyed traveling either. So.
How did you land up getting close to the Walters family?
Well, that was because Ray and I always brought the children with us when we went to Rock Glen, and this was always halfway house, and your grandma and your grandfather always treated Ray and I and the kids so nice, and so the children certainly remember them fondly, and so like I was telling your grandma the other day, that's one of the reasons I come back, is because I feel, although I've always liked, you know, you and Leslie and Bonney and Jeanne, I feel in a way, now that she's older, that I sort of owe it to her to come and see her now, because she can't travel. And so I usually try to make it for her birthday. I'm just kind of disappointed I don't come more often. But I'm finding it very hard with Amy being in Nova Scotia and Seth being at the coast. I'm just sort of flying from one coast to the other. I told someone I was bi-coastal, and they said, well, it was better than being bisexual or bipolar. So I said, well, yes, this is true. But so that's, you know, but Ray and I always really liked your folks. And we went out to Waters a few times with your grandma and grandpa and Bonney, and you know, we had some really nice times, and certainly when Ray lived here, he was very close to your grandma and your grandfather. So it went back many years, yes. And I felt that Ray was always much closer to your grandma than he ever was to Alex. He didn't seem to be able to identify with Alex too well. You know, just the way she was. I'm not blaming her or condemning her. I'm just saying that she wasn't sort of on Ray's wavelength. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about how did that affect the kids when you wound up moving them back to Edmonton?
Oh, well, Seth was 4. no, Seth was 5. Yeah, Amy was 8, and Robin was 11. Um, I, I think it was, I think it was fairly hard for the girls. When we first lived in Edmonton for a year and a half, I lived across the street from the school, which was oh, the bells, the paper blowing in your yard, the cars parked out in front of your house. Oh my God, it was a nightmare living beside that school. But anyway, the girls both went to that school. Well, Seth wasn't. He was only 5, and so when he was only 4 then. So by the time we moved to Calgary, he was 5, and by the time we moved back to Edmonton, he was 5. No, I'm sorry. He moved when he was 4, and then he was 5 when we finally moved out to the acreage. So the girls were like 7 and 10 when we moved to Edmonton, but 5 and 8, 11 we moved to the acreage. Yeah, and that's where they all were born. And the strange part about it is that Robin lives in a town of 3,000, very, very countryish. Amy lives in a very small town in Nova Scotia. And Seth doesn't even live in a very big place, only 30,000. I think, yeah, none of them really ended up in the big city. None of them.
Do you think that is because the acreage
Yeah,
felt like it was away?
yeah. Because I remember Robin saying to me at one time, I'm really sick of the city, Mom. I really am. And then her husband got in a car accident and he wasn't able to work for a couple of years. And then when he applied again for a job, he got it at Athabasca. So it's a very lovely little town. But again, a town, you know. But Robin loves it, yeah.
Why did you choose to move to the acreage?
Then again, that was my fault. Ray would have liked to, I think, stayed in Edmonton. But I said, oh, I want to change. I really want to change my lifestyle. And going out to the acreage was, oh, I'm telling you, Terry, it was so beautiful. We had 3 acres that were lovely. Ray was so good around the place, and we had a house that had 3 bedrooms upstairs and 2 bedrooms downstairs with a fully developed basement. It had a little carport. And, oh, it was so nice. But the nicest thing about the whole place was there was about 100 homes there. Well, everybody that lived in those houses were almost the same age, all the parents. The children were all the same age. And on our street, counting from about 10 down, what I did, the average number of children were 3 in a family. That was the average. Well, we had brownies, we had guides, we had junior forest wardens for the boys, we had hockey, we had, you know, different things that women belonged to, and we had a square dance club, and we had this, and we had that. There was always something going on. We made chocolates, we had, you know, dances, and wiener, and barbecues, and June, summer days, and Christmas concerts, and I mean, it was just the most beautiful place to live, to raise your family. Like, you just felt they were so safe. You knew every last person that lived in every house. You knew how many children they had and everything. And everybody supported the community to a greater or lesser degree. I mean, there's some that didn't support it that much. But most of the people did support the community. So it was like living in a really small town. Only you had Sherwood Park really close by, but at that time Sherwood Park had nothing. It didn't have a library or a swimming pool or any stores much or anything. So it was really battling, you know, it's kind of like pioneering it a bit. And Ray and I both enjoyed it. He loved Whitecroft too.
What year was the acreage actually built?
I think when we moved in in 66. I think it was built about 62 or 60. I think it was, yeah, I think maybe it was about 6 years old, yeah. I think it was built in 60, yeah.
And was that a stretch at all for you to afford it, to move into the acreage? Or that was comfortable at the time?
I'll tell you, it was a breeze, actually. That acreage, 3 acres, house fully developed, carport, $28,000. That was in 1966. I mean, it was. It wasn't that high because I think our payments are only like $200, and then we had a second mortgage on it with the original owners or something, and Ray paid that off really fast, and we ended up owning the house outright probably after about 6 years. We were there 21 years.
How did that affect Raymond with you moving back and his work changing and everything?
I think for Ray, it was the hardest. But one of the reasons he came back, strangely enough, was the fact that his best friend who had lived in Calgary, who had moved to the East Coast, but always came back to Calgary for different things. And he and this Bill were so close. And Bill died at 39 of a brain aneurysm. Then 4 of his friends and people that he worked with all died at 42 years old. By the time he left Calgary, he had many, many of his friends gone. And I think that's one of the other reasons too. He was just so upset with all this happening, yeah. So after we left Calgary, we had 3 close friends. That was it.
And do you feel that you personally, just from the move to Calgary for 10 years and stuff, you'd lost touch with all your earlier friends?
Yeah. And then I came back and contacted them again. Yeah. We just sort of took off where we left. Yeah. And these friends, now I've known them for 65 years. With the exception of a few of the men dying. Not any of the women yet. We're still intact. Nobody moved away, which is strange. So we're all still there. Yeah. So it's nice.
So tell me about your and Raymond's work when you moved back to Edmonton.
Well, I just kept on teaching. I taught in Edmonton for a year, and then we moved out to Sherwood Park. I taught there. And then Ray, when we were in Edmonton, he changed jobs. He went as maintenance manager for Safeway. And so his job changed. He'd been the maintenance man for Loblaws, and went 6 weeks in the spring and 6 weeks in the fall to turn on the air conditioning in the spring and shut it off in the fall and do a lot of the maintenance work. So he was out of town a lot. But when he quit Loblaws and went to Safeway as maintenance manager, then he wasn't away as much, yeah. So that was nice, yeah.
So was he enjoying this line of work, or was it just something he was good at because he'd been doing it, or did he have some other dream, something?
I don't know whether there was. I mean, I felt again that perhaps I influenced him to go into refrigeration. He was working for an oil company, Pure Oil, and they really quite liked him. And I thought, well, why did I suggest that he gets a trade when he was doing so well? But I think in the end he was happy he had it. You know what I mean? I mean the oil patch is always is always a bit unstable. You know, people do well in the oil patch, but some people don't do well. I mean, there was things at Whitecroft and different things, you know, Terry, where they just, all right, the fellow had been with the company forever, had never done anything else, and now he was like, say, third step up. And for some reason or other, not for any poor performance on these men's parts, they just cut off the third level. Everybody on this third level were gone. And I mean, oh, it was terrible. I mean, you saw people laid off from the oil company at different times, especially in the 80s. And it was devastating because a lot of them didn't know anything else except that. And it was very hard.
Tell me about Raymond. Any religious personality to him?
Well, he never really said that he believed in anything religious, but it was a very funny thing. Seth went to camp at, I'll never forget this. Seth went to camp at outside Sylvan Lake, and Ray and I had gone to pick him up. And they had this. It was one of these religious camps. They're all usually, you know, religious based. Some more than others. And I remember I can't remember what the minister was saying or anything. All of a sudden, Ray started to cry and carried on, and I thought, what's this all about, you know? And I never really did find out, but I mean, he didn't really believe in like I did, in a certain religion, you know. But I think in Ray's life, he did such a lot of things for other people. I think that he was a true Christian in that regard, you know. But he didn't particularly want to go to church or anything. Even though I went, for many years I didn't. Yeah.
Did you bring the kids up with church at all?
Not really, because you have to have, I mean, if you're going to bring your child up in a religious manner, you have to have both parents participate. And the fact that I participated some, but not wholeheartedly, because it's very difficult to do without your husband. And it doesn't give the children anything. Like if your husband is there and you're there, then it tells them that this is the same as my parents were. Both my parents were there. So it tells me that this is what they believe in, and maybe you should follow in their footsteps. But there's always this kind of division, you know, then the children do. Of my 3 children, Robin is the only one that still goes to church. Yeah.
And why do you think that is?
Partly because she's the eldest, probably. And the eldest generally get, I don't know, the eldest, well, there's always more expectations on them. You know, different reasons, and they have found that eldest children are usually the most successful and carry the family name and put a lot more expectations on themselves. And as parents, I don't know with all parents, but with Ray and I, we certainly with Robin put an awful lot more expectations on her than we ever did on the other 2.
Do you think at the time the other kids noticed that? Would they have noticed?
Well, it just made her a different person. Like, because I feel that Amy and Seth are very much alike, but I feel that Robin's a little different, because I think, you know, from being the eldest child and having these expectations she had of herself and so forth, I think that has a little different effect. And as I say, I felt, with my brother and I, that I certainly had more expectations put on me than there was ever on him. But maybe by the time you have the second one, you think, well, maybe it's not that important. The kids at school used to always complain in grade 6, oh, my brother and my sister are so spoiled. I'd say, have pity on your poor parents. I said, when you have your first one, you have a lot of energy and you're trying to raise them right. By the second one, you really are not quite as good. And by the third one, you're tired. I said, just try to understand your parents' point of view or something else.
Do you have any funny stories about your children when they were babies?
Yeah, I think one of the funny things was Seth. He never really was one to talk. This one day, he got this, he called one day and he said, Puckadee, Puckadee, he said. Well, I thought that was really fascinating. It was a long word and it really sounded good, but I never could get him to say it again. But I don't know, like with each one of them, it was, kind of different things. I remember Robin, she must have been about 10. And we were talking about cremation. I said, well, cremation takes place in the furnace. So she said, Mother, who do we have down there? Who do we have in our furnace, No. Yeah. It was funny. And Amy was so, this isn't funny, but it's really sort of Amy's personality. President Kennedy had died. And for my generation, that was really a tragedy. Because I think we were with Kennedy like the present day Americans are with Obama. Like somehow we expected more of him, and then he was killed. And we were so upset. And I remember coming home to Amy and saying, Amy, I said, President Kennedy was killed. She said, oh, Mom, she said, isn't that too bad? She said, he had so much to do. I was 4 years old. Well, yep. No. Not fun.
Looking at the lives of your children, what would you say is the thing Robin's done that made you the proudest?
Well, Robin is a very nice person. But she went through an education and she didn't like teaching. So she waited for a year or so, and then she went into library science. And I thought that was really something for her to not like teaching and then to really choose another career and do well in it. And she's in the library at the university in Athabasca now. Yeah. So I feel very proud that she did that. And, so that's one of the things that I really have admired about her, is the fact, that she does things she sets out to do, yeah.
And Amy?
Well, Amy, I've always admired Amy's free spirit. She always is able to hold down a good job. She's quite musical. And she has done a lot. She has managed to take her music to another level. And I think for Amy that was quite hard. She never had the natural, I think, musical ability that Seth has. And but I think she's managed to do it and contribute a lot. And in every community that she's been in, and they've moved a lot too. And I feel that she's always put a lot into it. Caring and doing things. having different benefits, and you know, always involved in the community. Like this New Year's, like her and Craig got a bunch of musicians together, and they rented a little hall, and they danced and you know, sort of played music all night long, and different people that came along, and Amy and Craig, like they organized all that, you know. So, you know, they care about the community, because they have things, different functions at their house, and you know, try to do something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And Seth?
Oh, Seth, I admire Seth. He's very ambitious too. He finally has his commercial pilot's license. He's flying cargo and that sort of thing out of Fort McMurray, and then he'll be putting floats on the plane, and then he will fly um, people to the fishing lodges in the summer, which is something he really loves. I admire Seth's music ability. Of the children, he was certainly the one that pursued it the longest, started the earliest. Well, I guess the girls started at 8. Well, anyway, he started at 8, and he diligently played the organ and then the piano till he was, but he took lessons till he was about 16, 17, right from 8 years old. And I mean, as I say, Ray and I certainly encouraged him and so forth, but you still have to be the person that plays. And I admire that about him. And I admire the fact that I think that he's an excellent father. I wouldn't always say he was an excellent husband. He has put Danielle through the hoops a few times with changing jobs and doing this and doing that. But I feel he's a very loving, caring parent, and I think the children really adore him. And he's very talented. In other ways, he can, you know, he can repair almost everything, build most things, and he's very good at that too. He's like his dad in that regard. I mean, Ray was very good that way, and he's much like Ray. But Ray did take him out at 8 years old, and you know, put him on the little tractor and have him do everything, and yeah, so it was an advantage that way, yeah. So he went through for firefighter for 15 years, didn't really like it. I was disappointed when he quit, but what can you say, you know, as a parent, you can't really always say something.
What do you think is the worst mistake you've ever made?
Worst mistake I ever made. Well, I made a few along the way. I don't know. Maybe not marrying a millionaire in Bermuda? I don't know. Would you think that might be a mistake?
Some would.
I don't know.
Or any regrets, you know?
Well,
Things that you should have gone after more, or...
Well, I would have liked to have pursued a speaking career. Like, I would have liked to have been one of those motivational speakers or something like that. But I just never did it. And I really feel that I should have done it. You know, but you just sort of never get off the ground. You think, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah, I'm not going to do it. But, you know, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
At 74, I decided to take the keyboard. Now this has been a challenge, I tell you. I realize that children get all their musical ability from their father. But I try hard. And the reason I do it other than the fact that I quite enjoy it, is the fact that they say with all older people, you should take up something that's really a challenge to you, that doesn't come easy, and so that you can get your hand and eye coordination and your right side of your brain working.
Right.
So I hope it has helped. I mean, who knows, you know? But it certainly given me an interest, and I just really like my music teacher, so that helps. She's just a sweetheart of a girl, and she certainly has to have the patience of Job to teach me. So, you know, so that's kind of harder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you think's the smartest decision you ever made?
Well, I think for me, going to university was the smartest decision I made. I realized that it was lucky because I was working at the telephone office, and most of the girls there hadn't even graduated from high school, and there was nowhere to go there. You could become supervisor, and then when you became supervisor, everybody hated you, and nobody would talk to you, and that wasn't my goal, to be one of those. And so when this teaching opportunity came along, I thought, I think I'd like to do that. And I must admit that I loved university. I liked studying, and I loved university. Yeah.
What would you say is the happiest day of your life?
I'd say in many ways, maybe when I got married. I mean, I think marriage is a happy day. It's kind of a blending and a very happy time for you. I think the day I got my degree was a very happy day. Yeah.